Good morning and welcome. Once again, we reflect on the gospel of today's liturgy, the Gospel of St. Luke. At that time, so many people were crowding together that they were trampling one another underfoot. Jesus began to speak first to his disciples. Beware of the leaven, that is, the hypocrisy of the Pharisees. There's nothing concealed that will not be revealed, nor secret that will not be known. Therefore, whatever you have said in the darkness will be heard in the light, and what you have whispered behind closed doors will be proclaimed on the housetops. I tell you, my friends, do not be afraid of those who kill the body, but after that can do no more. I shall show you whom to fear. Be afraid of the one who, after killing, has the power to cast into Gehenna. Yes, I tell you, be afraid of that one. Are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 small coins? Yet not one of them has escaped the notice of God. Even the hairs of your head have all been counted. Do not be afraid. You are worth more than sparrows. The gospel of the Lord. And reflecting on the gospel, Jesus, speaking to the people of his time, once again critical of the Pharisees, calls them hypocrites. Jesus would be categorized in that group of people who followed the party line, so to speak. He would be considered a Pharisee, so not all of them were hypocrites, but many of them fell into that category. And Jesus explains why, and maybe gives me pause to reflect. They knew all the rules and the regulations, and they continually reminded people of them, telling them this and that, and you're wrong. And then they, through the history of Revelation, God is always then presumed to be angry of those who disobey, and he's going to cast them in the fires of Gehenna. And Jesus is trying to give us a revelation of a God that is loving, that holds us in the palm of his hand, a God who describes himself as a God of love. And then he gives that, at the end of the gospel, that beautiful image. He talks about the 5 sparrows for 2 cents, cheap even in his time. And yet he says not one of them falls to the ground without God knowing it. And the hairs of our head are numbered, each one. That's how God looks at his creation. You and me, the world in which we live, everyone without distinction, not just those who keep rules. He's not angry necessarily at those who don't. That's not the issue. What he's trying to say, I think, Jesus, in not only this gospel, but throughout the scriptures, is I want you to be witnesses of a God who is love. Certainly, if someone's doing something wrong, you point that out. But I have never really successfully changed anyone around. Yelling at people, condemning them to hell hasn't worked for me, at least, both personally and from the pulpit preaching. So often people will say, you don't preach about those who don't come to Mass on Sunday. Well, they're not here. And yelling at them is probably what drove them away to begin with, or at least it helped. So what is it that Jesus is asking? Not so much to try to get a hold of all the rules and regulations, although that has a place. And it's not that we don't stand up when we see someone doing something wrong, but finger-pointing and labeling and condemning and ostracizing or driving people out, making it us and them, that's not witnessing the gospel. Walking with them, being compassionate, being understanding, trying to put myself in their place. All of that is witnessing of what Jesus did in his time and what he asks you and me to do today. If I listen to his revelation of God, I see a God who is love. And I must say, in the silence of my prayer, I respond with more enthusiasm and more generosity to love than to threats, not just from God, but from other people. And I would think it works the other way, that people will respond more openly and generously to love and compassion and understanding than finger-pointing and threats. We're in the middle of a presidential election, and I can't help but think of that's about all the campaigns are. Finger-pointing, name-calling, labeling. And then what will I do? Hopefully all of us go and vote on election day, and then I'm done. The responsibility is now whoever I elect. Or if it's the opposition, then I can continue to name-call. And yet that's not what God wants. We need to reflect on how I live in the world, not how I verbally explain things, but how do I put them into practice? How do I let God's teaching through Jesus touch my heart? Do I live it? Do I embody it in myself? Do I accept God's forgiveness? Or am I still running around worried about keeping rules and losing the spirit of compassion and love? It's something to reflect on. It makes me uncomfortable. I can't just sit back and point. After all, I know all the rules. I know how they're supposed to live. I sound like a Pharisee. And then I hear Jesus say, "You're a hypocrite." And I have to say, yeah, I guess. There are days and there are moments where all I'm doing is finger-pointing and name-calling, and the Spirit of God's compassion and love, the forgiveness that Jesus shows on the cross, escapes me totally. I'm not living that. I'm not reflecting that. And so in prayer today, I ask God for that grace to not only hear his words, not only know his rules and regulations, but much more importantly, live them and walk with people with whom I come into contact today with that kind of compassion and understanding, so that I can really be witnessing the presence of Jesus today, at this moment, in this life. We hope that you continue to pray for one another, that you continue to be safe, you and your family. And thank you for sharing and praying with me today. God bless.